Brad, have we ever done a Q&A this late? I feel like
It's
the
way
the
past bedtime.
the Nets playing the Lakers right now. Like Boston and Sacramento. Like
we're
that's what I
definitely
feel like right now.
we're definitely watching the West Coast game.
That is what is
You being awake means everything.
it's just different. Out of all of these that we've done, this is the latest one. But I feel good about it. I feel good about it.
Just wait, you'll get Hawaii next month or something, then you'll have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, we're gonna have to postpone that one until COVID is over, and then we're doing that in person.
Absolutely. But that'll be 5 years. So there you have it.
It's true.
Okay, well, I think that we can officially get started. People are, Jen will continue to let people in, but it is wonderful to see you all tonight. This is such a privilege. There really aren't words to express how holy and meaningful this moment is. It's a part of this evening is a part of our Black History Month efforts in the Building Bridges Chevra B'nai David, which started with our Chevra project and really began about a year ago, a little over a year ago, in our efforts to deepen our relationships both with the Black community and in our sensitivity and learning of how to be better and how we communicate around race and especially with Jews of color. So this is an extremely powerful and meaningful opportunity that we have tonight, where we're going to get to be a part of a discussion both about They Ain't Ready for Me, which is a fantastic film. Hopefully you have all already watched. If not, you have the chance to watch it until midnight tonight. We have access as a community to it. We're very grateful for that opportunity from Manasseh Films. And the two people that we're going to be speaking with are remarkable in so many ways. The first is Tamar Manasseh, who is she's just she's a gadol in her field. She is a powerhouse. She's a rabbinical student who has been leading the fight against senseless killings in the South Side of Chicago. And the film itself is all about the holy work that she's been doing. She's fearless, she's passionate, she has chutzpah, holy chutzpah, and she founded MASK, Mothers and Men Against Senseless Killings. The director and producer of the film about Tamar and her journey and all of the work she's doing is Brad Rothschild, and he is an award-winning filmmaker who has worked really in ways to bring more awareness around extremely painful issues. He's talked about he's done work around the Holocaust. He's done work around certain issues in Israel. He is not afraid to tackle what our community needs to see visually and to learn from. And the two of them have a phenomenal partnership where they've made this film that is educating. It's there to educate our community and far beyond it. And it doesn't shy away, as neither of them do, from the issues that we've been living certainly over the past year and issues that have existed in our community around race and what it means to be a Jew, and also around violence that exists in our country. It feels almost like they are like Hashem's hand is in all of this, that God, brought this moment, that they're doing this film now because this is the right time. And we pray that all of their efforts are extremely successful and continue in the holiness that they've started. What I'm going to do is ask some questions that I've received from a couple different groups in our community. And for those who have not seen the film, I will, weave you in so you're a part of it, but please make sure to watch it before midnight tonight. And we're going to hear from both of these fantastic people. So the film, one of the things that hit me that was so transformative was to see the shots where they're in the shul, they're in the synagogue, and Tamar is part of this Ethiopian synagogue in Chicago, and she talks about how her favorite place used to be in the shul, but now it's on the street corner. She's moved, from the scroll to the street, and she's done what really appears in the film as creating a mishkan. Last week we did, Parshat we're Truma, Tetzaveh. We're in these parshiot right now, where we're thinking about what it is to build a home for God, and she does that. It's portable, it's malleable, it's open on all sides. We read Vasuli Mikdash V'Shachanti B'Tocham, that we're supposed to build a space, a mikdash, holy place for God, so that God can dwell amongst us. And she does that in a way where she brings Hashem to the streets, and the streets to Hashem. So she is obviously Black, Jewish, and a woman, and she will speak about that in many different ways. But I just want to start out by asking you both, Brad, how did you find Tamar, and what was your vision for the film? Tamar, the passion that you have to face those moments where you want to light it up or burn it down, and somehow you have the strength to lift other people up and yourself up. Where does that come from? The two of you, I'd love to hear, I think we'd all love to hear how this came to be.
Tamar, you want me to
Brad,
start?
you go first.
Yeah.
You go first.
Okay. First of all, that was probably one of the best intros we've had in any of these. So thank you. It was October of 2010, and I was reading the JTA.
It wasn't 2010.
That's 2010, 2016. Sorry, I don't know.
Don't date me. Don't put me. Don't
Sorry.
you make me that old.
Wow. It's late. October 2016, and I was, the JTA puts out a daily email that I'm sure many people on this call look at. And I was looking at it. There's an article entitled Black Rabbinical Student Leads Army of Moms Against Gun Violence in Chicago. And I thought, oh, this looks pretty interesting. Let me check this out. And at the top of the article, there's a picture of this striking woman named Tamar Manasseh. And the article describes the work that she was doing on the south side of Chicago, trying to prevent gun violence. And it talked about MASK, the organization that she created, Mothers and Men Against Senseless Killing. But then what really caught my attention was when Tamar says in the article that it's her Judaism. She's an activist because of her Judaism. Her Judaism is what causes her to be an activist. And I read that and I thought, oh, this looks really interesting, and I want to know more. I finished the article, and Tamar's personality really jumped out at me. And I decided pretty much then and there that I wanted to see if she would be willing to consider making a film. So I reached out to her via social media and via her organization's website. I sent an email to her. I introduced myself as a documentary filmmaker from New York City. And I said, I think your story is really interesting, and I wonder if you would consider maybe working on a documentary film. And she didn't respond to most of my inquiries. Finally, I got a response to the email, and she wrote, "Thank you for your email and for your consideration. I think my life is about as interesting as watching the paint dry, so I'm going to pass." And I replied pretty quickly, and I said, with all due respect, I disagree with you, and I would hope that you would reconsider. And she left. She didn't say absolutely no. So I felt like, okay, maybe there's a little chance that this will happen. And I kept going, and I kept reaching out to her every so often. And sometimes she would respond to me, and sometimes she wouldn't. We had 2 phone conversations. And at the end of each one, I just hung up the phone, and I thought to myself, she is even more incredible than I had originally thought. And I have to do this somehow. And then one day I got a message from her on Facebook. And she said, "I'm in Staten Island. If you want to meet me, I can meet you now." So I'm sure that despite the fact that you guys are in LA, some of you have a sense of what it's like, what the New York City geography is like. I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Tamar was in Staten Island. And I wrote her back immediately, and I said, "Give me 2 hours and I'll be there." And I dropped what I was doing, and I drove out to Staten Island, and I met Tamar. And we had a really good conversation. And at the end of the conversation, she kind of shrugged her shoulders and she said, I guess if you want to make this film this coming summer, we can do it. And that was it.
There's always some sort of resistance in life, you know.
And still he persisted. And still he persisted. Yes, yes. So the question, what was your question for me? I always get so taken by that story when you say it. What is that? This what kind
where
of
does this
striking young woman? I love that part.
So the question is really where this ability to fight for others or to lift others up even when you're not feeling it yourself comes from in you. You know, how this all started for you. And I think that you see it in the chat. Some people are asking, you know, about your Ethiopian past and, you know, those things.
I'm not Ethiopian. My people are from Alabama and Mississippi and South Carolina and North Carolina. I am the descendant of slaves and sharecroppers, like most other Black people in this country. It's nothing exotic. It's nothing. I'm just a regular, just like every other Black person in this country. I am. I'm also Jewish, so I'm a lot like a lot of other Jews too. And it's really hard for people to sometimes wrap their mind around how you could do all of those things. But I mean, it's kind of my thing. I'm really great at it at this point. And the thing is, I think that I've always been on this path. As a kid, I went to Jewish day school and I lived in Black Chicago. I lived on the other side of the tracks. I lived in one city, and my Jewish day school was very much in another city. It was very close to the University of Chicago. It's less than a mile away from the Chicago home of Barack Obama. It's a very affluent community, but I didn't grow up there. I grew up in Inglewood, one of the poorest communities in the country. And I went to Jewish day school. So what ended up happening to me as a kid, very early on, I realized that it was something different about me because I represented for most of those kids who were coming from wealthier suburbs, who lived in the neighborhood where our school was. Kids that went to that school, they didn't live in my neighborhood. I mean, my mother could barely afford it. My whole family chipped in to help pay tuition. So it was very rare that there would be other kids there like me. They weren't like me. But I ended up representing what those kids, when I was very young, when we were in first or second, third grade, I represented what Black people were to those kids. I was the only Black person that these kids knew. So I understood right now, I represent Blackness. Whatever the idea of who Black people are going to be to these kids, and when they grow up, who they become, it's gonna start being formed now. So I understood that. I understood the role that I played. I also understood that I represent the Jewish community in the Black community, in the neighborhood that I came from, because those kids never actually got to meet Jews either. And like it was like, hey, you're not Sammy Davis Jr. You're poor too. So you're not all Jews. Everybody knows Jews are white and rich. How are you a Jew? And this was very early on. I learned this. So since a child, I mean, like as early as 7 years old, I can remember Black people telling me, and these are adults telling me, you're not a Jew. The Jews killed Jesus. Now, I mean, as a 7-year-old, what first grader, second grader do you know has to explain to a full-grown adult about religion? Has to have these kind of conversations, has to educate people who are their parents' age. But I've been doing it for a long time. So, I mean, honestly, when I think about it now, there was really only one direction that my life could go in. There was really only one path that it could ever really take, and that's the one that I'm on now. So it's kind of like, this is what I was built for. I was made for this. I was literally created to do exactly what I do with my life right now. I get to be a bridge. I've been a bridge for a long time. And that's what I'm good at. And so the thing is, they say if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. This is not work to me. This is my purpose. I'm living my purpose. This is what I was created for. When God thought of forming me, this is what God put into me. I was sent here to do exactly what it is that I do. So if I get tired, there are plenty of days that at 10 p.m., I want to quit. I'm done with this. I'm not going back. I'm finished. What was that?
Oh, no, keep going. Keep going.
I want to quit. I'm finished. This is it. I've had enough. I've seen a lot of stuff on the block, and sometimes it can be very disheartening and discouraging. And sometime between the time I close my eyes and the time I open them again, that spirit is renewed within me. It's reinvigorated. I'm ready to go again. I have a renewed sense of purpose. This is what I have to do, and I'm okay, and I'm ready to go again. So where it comes from the maker who made me. It comes from Hashem. It comes from God. This is what I'm supposed to do with my life. This is how I'm supposed to live my life. So I might bend, but I never break. I might get tired, but I never quit. It's not something that I can do. So that's pretty much that's where it comes from. I've always been doing what I do right now in one way or another for my entire life.
And we're blessed that you are. There's to clarify with the Ethiopian Peace, I think because your synagogue had Ethiopian in the title.
All
people
black
were wondering where you came from.
All black synagogues in this country at one time had Ethiopian in the name of it somewhere, because so many early African American Jews left America to go to Ethiopia to fight and make sure it was never colonized. It was never conquered. So it speaks to the spirit of Ethiopia, that unconquered spirit. It was never colonized. It was never taken over. And there were so many black people who left Jim Crow, who left the racism of America behind to go and make sure that they protected Ethiopia from that. They protected Mother Ethiopia from what they'd experienced in Mississippi and in Alabama and in Georgia and Tennessee and Arkansas. So that's why we don't forget those people. We always keep them lifted up. We always stay reminded of how strong they are. And we come from that strength, and we go into that strength, and we carry that strength forward. So that's why it's Ethiopian in the name.
Beautiful. Thank you for teaching us in that. I'm going to weave together just a couple things that you said, because I know people have a lot of questions for you. So what you said about the school and growing up, I know that, that was in the film, and it was a really poignant thing. You were teaching teens, based on your own experience, and what it is to have people turn to you and say, how did you become Jewish? And the moment when you visited the Confederate statues with your mom, and that's, you were just talking about your family and where you come from, there was a question that came from a couple different members of our community about, how you mentioned this struggle to survive and thrive in an environment that honored slave owners. And one of the questions is how do Jews of color survive and thrive in Jewish institutions, which is something that you were just addressing, and how does that also fit into your identity as a Black woman, and also the sort of the meaning behind Black History Month as well?
Okay, first, I'm not a Jew of color, I'm Black. It's so funny that on my birth certificate, it says Black. On my mother's birth certificate, it says Negro. And on my children's birth certificate, it says African American. And neither one of us ever picked those names. Those are all different monikers that America gave us when it felt comfortable changing the name for what people who look like me were going to be. So now it appears that America is more comfortable with calling us of color, because it's not. Black is pretty touchy right now with the Black Lives Movement and so much going on around Blackness and discussion about it. It's a lot more, it's easier for us to be of color. I'm not of color, I'm just Black. And the thing about it is, me navigating Jewish institutions and being part of it and everything else, I haven't really cared much about that since I was probably maybe 10 or 11. I'm not a Jew because of the Jewish people. I'm a Jew because of God. So I honestly really do not care much what the Jewish people think about me. I care very much about what God thinks about me. That's what I'm here for. I'm not here to fit in. God didn't put me here.
I have chills.
With the Jewish community. God put me here to do work for God's people. And that's all God's people. God doesn't make mistakes. God didn't create a certain group of people by accident. That didn't happen. So it's me. I take my Judaism out into the world that wants to be a part of it, that wants to receive it. I don't force anyone to accept mine, and I don't want theirs to be forced on me. So that's why you can find me on a street corner in a sukkah or doing a Yiskor service on a corner in the middle of the hood, because in that place, I'm not asking anybody to accept mine. You can come or go. You can stay or go. You can accept it or not. And nobody's forcing me to accept theirs there. I'm not sitting in a pew. I'm not listening to what somebody else is talking about. I'm not listening to what they're teaching or what they're telling me or how I should interpret things. That's not what's happening. We're there, we're talking together, we're sharing ideas, we're reading text, we're doing these different things. And it's very give and take. But I don't try to fit in anymore. I really don't. Because the thing about it is, one thing we hardly ever discuss, and we talked about this, it might have been an outtake of the movie, but there were Jews who owned slaves. So a lot of times people say, hey, how did you become Jewish? It's such an anomaly, but it's really not. Because there are a lot of slaves who actually had Jewish owners, and they did things like kept the Sabbath. They covered their heads, they lit candles, they did all of these different things. And to this day, many of them don't know why their families do those things, but they are very Jewish practices. But we never really talk about that. That was something that other people did. Jews didn't have any part of that. But yes, they did. We were a part of that too. Just like Black Americans who are Jews are part and parcel of slavery and everything that came after it. So are Jews who were here for that period too. And we need to be very honest about that. We need to have conversation and talk about that, so we understand where we came from together, so we can get somewhere together. But Black History Month, honestly, once again, something that is good to have it, but Black history, honestly, Black history is every day to me. I live it every day. I create it every day. I remember it every day. I live it every day. So when Black History Month comes around, I can't say, hey, I observe this in any special way or anything like that. I observe it every day, every single day. It's a part of who I am every day. It's a part of the way I live every day. So I think we have a long way to go, but I think we've come a long way. And I've definitely seen a lot of growth in the past year, especially having these Q&As, these discussions, like Brad said. This is, I think, like our 48th one. And we've had a lot of really great discussions. I see in the Jewish community, there are a lot of people who are ready to build bridges. There are a lot of, to build really actual meaningful relationships, not just the relationships where people can say, hey, I have Black friends, or hey, I go to this temple or that temple and they don't look at me weird when I go there. No, actual real relationships where together we as Jews make the world a better place. So, I'm super, super encouraged by that. And I think that those kind of things happen in neutral spaces like my corner. It doesn't happen at synagogue on the North Shore. It doesn't happen at one all-Black synagogue on the South Side. It happens in a neutral space where everyone's comfortable and everyone's included equally.
Beautiful. We so needed to hear that. And I think that it's a real Kiddush Hashem that you guys are, traveling together virtually, I guess, to educate all of our communities. And you mentioned this past year. So, it's sort of like elephant in the room. It goes without saying, this past year has been extremely tough, understatement of the year. And the fact that we've been battling both our health and safety, as well as, how do we really fight systemic racism? I think a lot of us are feeling very powerless of what difference we can make. And that's one of the most powerful parts of your film, in what both of you present, that there is something that we can do, and we can just start with being a mom who cares and steps up. And, I think anyone who watched the film, if you're like me, immediately was like, oh my gosh, I have to learn more. So then you go down that rabbit hole of, of every article that's out there. And I think that one of the things that anyone will see right away is that this journey has continued with such intensity for you over this past year. It's not 2020 and 2021. It's not just what everyone else is experiencing. Your community and the work you've been doing, you've lost 2 volunteers who were gunned down. You have battled your own health and your own safety. And somehow you have made the space that was a sukkah and, where you had a Pesach Seder, into a space that's a school for children who otherwise would be completely overlooked. So I'm wondering if you can, take us, each of you, beyond the film, into, some reflections on this past year, because it's, my heart goes out to you. This is excruciating. And it sounds like the fight has far from stopped with the film. It's really just begun.
Brad, do you want to go there first?
No, you go ahead.
Honestly, your heart should go out to me, and it's not excruciating. It's just life. It is. It honestly is. And I can't look at it as anything less than that. I have to always be able to make the adjustments on my feet and not get knocked down by it. So it doesn't matter what I'm going through. Like I said, I'm put here to do the work, and the work is what I do. So there are going to be good days and there are going to be not so good days, but you learn from each of them. You always have to have a takeaway from it. That's it. But I think when I look back on the past year, COVID is there, and honestly, we've learned to kind of maneuver around in that. We've learned to kind of live through that, live within it. But I'm so proud of the school that we managed to build. I'm so proud of the things that we managed to do on that block. But in the past year, especially since we've been since the Q&As for the movie and the movie's been going through the film festival circuit, we've seen a lot. I think I want to pay more attention to just the issues, the discussions around race in this country. I think right now is the time we can have some very honest discussions about it and make some real meaningful progress. We can actually do something. We can do things that really matter right now. And so what I saw over this past year, and especially in January with the insurrection at the Capitol, and I tell people this all the time, Jews are taught to battle the Amalekites, make war with the Amalek in every generation. In every generation, you make war with Amalek. And the thing is, I'm making war with the same Amalekites that my mother did, and my grandmother did, and her mother did, and her mother did since we got here. Racism and hate and bigotry is the Amalekites of my generation, of my mother, of my grandmother. And what I saw with the rise of white supremacy and with what happened at the Capitol and what happened in Charlottesville, hearing these people chant, "Jews will not replace us," hearing the insurrectionists chant, "String them up," when they were talking about Mike Pence, when they were looking for Nancy Pelosi. They were looking for white people. They were talking about Jews will not replace us. They didn't say black people. So the thing is, the same Amalekites that I've had, the same monsters that have been under my bed and my mother and my grandmother's and her mother's before that, now they are under the bed. That is the monster that is plaguing, that's terrorizing the Jewish community as well, and the community of white people who aren't necessarily like them. And now is the best time to build a bridge, and now is the best time to start building these things, because if white supremacists are building, something else needs to be happening on the other side to counter that. So we have to start actually building true relationships, these bridges, and having like what you have with your community and the church that you work with. We really have to start actually being real allies. We have to be in places where if we're pushed into service to fight this, we can fight it together, that we can have each other's back. And so when I go places now, mask has been expanding into the Deep South. And when I go to places now, it's important for me not just to talk about the work that mask does, but to actually, wherever I go, I make sure that I connect with the Jewish community in those cities, in those towns, wherever it is. Because the thing is, if we're going to build bridges, how about we build them right here on the ground, face to face? We can have conversations. I facilitate conversations between the Jewish community and Black people in different cities that I go to all the time, because you can actually make a real impact with communities in your own city, with Black people in your own city, with Jews in your own city. You can actually build those kind of relationships on the ground. It doesn't have to go through a third party. It doesn't have to go through an organization like mine, or the NAACP, or the Urban League, or the different Jewish councils of urban affairs. It doesn't have to go through that. It can actually go from neighbor to neighbor like it did on the block here. So when I go to different places, I try my best to make sure that I start to help build those bridges, to form those relationships, because they're super important right now. Because not only does the Black community need it, the Jewish community needs it really badly right now. Because we do have the same exact monsters. We do have the same Amalekites now. So I think over the past year, COVID was bad. It's been bad. We've lost a lot of people. There's been a lot. It's been a lot going on with that. I've had my own personal battles. There's been a lot going on. But I think that I'd rather think about all of the good that has come out of it, all of the things that we've gotten to do, and all the building that we've gotten to do as a result of this film, and being able to expand the way that we are, and make the connections that we've been making. I think I'm happier about that than I'm sadder or um more upset about anything else. I think I kind of just like to look at it that way, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I think, Brad, I'll let you respond to, and then I'll respond to both.
Yeah, there's not much more I can say than to, I mean, you can't top what she just said, but I wanted to pivot a little bit and mention Tamar, and you had mentioned the school that has been built out in that space. What's astounding when you think about it is, and these are shipping containers that have been retrofitted into classrooms on that block.
4 of them, right? Is that
3,
Yeah,
right?
3?
it's four. My office is 1. It's 3 classrooms in the office. Yeah.
The astounding part is that Tamar built these before the pandemic. So nobody had any way of knowing what was going to happen, yet somehow Tamar had intended to build these classrooms for older kids because some high schools in the neighborhood had been shut down. So instead of kids just completely dropping out of school, the idea was that there would be vocational training for young people in the neighborhood. But then COVID hit, and those classrooms have been transformed into learning centers for children who otherwise would completely fall through the cracks. Tamar can talk about this way better than I can, but we're talking about children of essential workers who have not been able to work from home, children of people who don't necessarily have high-speed internet access at home, don't have access to tablets or computers necessarily, and who already were in a failing school system. So now a generation of kids around the country in neighborhoods like Inglewood are going to fall further behind than they already were, and they were already behind. But in this neighborhood, there are kids who are being lifted up. And again, one of Tamar's cousins said to her, "Well, Noah, you built the ark and now it started raining." So the foresight that she had is just unreal. So that's really, other than what Tamar had said about the fact that we get to screen the film around the country and we get to have these difficult conversations. We had a Q&A a few weeks ago, and somebody asked us about the scene in the film where the small children are taken out of the police van.
Oh, the cage was horrifying.
And if that meant something different today watching it than it did when it happened. And I thought about it, and I thought that was a really interesting question. And I think after the murder of George Floyd last summer, and after the Black Lives Matter protests all summer long, and people talking about, the easy slogan is defund the police, but it's really more reimagine the police. And if you think of that scene, the police have no business dealing with 4-year-old children who are thirsty and who unfortunately tried to break into a truck to take water. And I take some comfort in knowing that in that situation, the police had enough understanding that they knew that that wasn't something for them to deal with, and they found Tamar to deal with it. So when we talk about defunding the police or reimagining the police, we need more community activists. We need situations like that not to be handled by police, but by social workers, by parents, by neighborhood activists. And that, to me, is one of the big takeaways of the past year. And it's not, you can throw around a slogan and people can attach whatever meaning they want to that. But in a neighborhood like Inglewood, it's not going to help to put more cops on the streets. That's not the problem in that neighborhood. There are already plenty of cops on those streets, and the crime goes up and up. So it's not a question of, well, let's get tanks for the cops and maybe that'll make things better. No, it's about how police interact with neighborhoods in which they're working, how neighborhoods are going to be called upon to police themselves. And really, you know, the time that I spent on the block, you never see police hanging out there and interacting with people. But it's the safest small area that you'll see in that entire on the entire south side probably. And why is that? Because a community has been created, because neighbors care about one another. And to me, that's the big lesson of the film, and that's the lesson of the past year, that we need to learn how to care for one another in a different way.
Thanks, Brad. I forgot about all of that. That was beautiful.
It was fantastic. And that's, you're here to balance each other and bring out. You know, I think the image of you sitting at you know, a street corner, you're at a crossroads. And so much of, we talked about this a little bit before we officially started, but you're in a place where you know, you're straddling the Black community, the Jewish community, you know, being a woman in leadership, which, you know, I know that you're aware our community is very committed to female leadership in Judaism, and I'm thrilled to be a part of that in our community. You're a trailblazer. You sit at that intersection, and that's, you know, it can be a very painful place to inhabit, but you've turned it into a really holy and connecting place to inhabit. And, you know, I know a lot of the questions that have started to come to me are, you know, people wondering about, you know, your experience in being a rabbinical student, you know, what is it that you are doing in that sense, because they're curious and want to know your background, and also sort of what in ways that we can support you better, because our community is certainly seeing this film as a call where we can support the holy work you're doing and also cultivate more of our own. What opportunities our Jewish community can also explore here. So you mentioned that, you know, we have our Building Bridges Chevra and our relationship with Faithful Central Bible Church. You know, you as a unique inhabitant of that space of sitting at a crossroads, you have a view of everything, and, you know, you also know what it is to be the other. So I just would love to hear your reflections.
I think that Abraham was on to something with the whole tent and the open on four sides, and people can come and go as they're comfortable with or as they please. And it's very open and inviting to anyone who wants to come. And getting to be there, it has really changed my understanding of what it means to be a Jew, and it's deepened it. And it's kind of like, for a long time, I mean, the only reason I ever, and I'm not a rabbinic student, I was actually done with my rabbinic studies about 7 years ago. And the only reason I haven't received smicha yet is because I'm actually a woman. So I had to wait on them to vote on when they were going to change that. So
can you explain that a little bit more? Because I think, you know, we're all like, why didn't they vote?
The Israelite Board of Rabbis out of New York, they have never ordained a woman. So women have graduated from the academy, but they have never actually received smicha. So the thing was, they would have let me graduate, but that's not what I was there for. I wasn't there to do that. I was actually there to become a rabbi. And like, my daughter really showed an affinity for Jewish education and Jewish life and Jewish study and Jewish teaching. And I thought that maybe one day she might want to pursue a career in the rabbinate. So at that time, she had just become the first Black competitor in the Chidon HaTanakh competition, the Bible competition. And I thought yeah, I thought that might be the path that she was on. So
how old is she?
She's now 24. She was 12 then? So the thing was, okay, well, if my daughter wants to do this, there are no opportunities for her to become a rabbi in our community. So I think I did it because so many times we're encouraged to be good wives and good mothers, but we're not encouraged to be good leaders. We can be teachers, but we can't be leaders. And so my thing was, I need to make sure that this road is paved for my daughter if this is what she wants to go down. This is the avenue she wants to pursue. I have to make sure she has the opportunity to do that. So, and not just for her, but any of the other girls in our community that might want to become rabbis. Like, I think that that should be open to them. Once again, God didn't make mistakes. If women can actually make men, why can't women be rabbis? If women can give birth to rabbis, why can't we be rabbis? That just does not make sense. So that's what this was about for me. It was about paving a way, making a way for all of the girls that will come after me, for girls that will come after my daughter, and girls that will come after her daughter. And that's what this was about for me. So 7 years ago, I've been done for a long, long time. So the thing is, once I actually received smicha, which actually has now been offered to me, so I was supposed to receive it December 12th, but because of COVID, we had to postpone it. But
Where would you receive it?
Chicago, here in Chicago, from that academy, from that institution, from that.
Oh, Baruch Hashem.
So, the thing about it is, people often ask, like, I mean, how does your life change as a result of you becoming a rabbi? It doesn't. It doesn't change at all. Like, it really doesn't. I mean, hey, I have another really neat spot for another certificate on the wall, but other than that, it doesn't change. The work does not change, because isn't this the work that we were called to do? Isn't this the work that, don't rabbis teach? Don't we? And I mean, by action, I teach. I let people see my Judaism. I bring them into it with me. I let them see me actually practicing my Judaism, living my Judaism. And people say, hey, like, why do you do that? Why do you do this? And when I explain it to them, it's kind of like, you know what? I want to do that too. So now Yom Kippur, I'm in a neighborhood full of people who, have killed in order to keep from being killed. I have people who have relatives, sisters and brothers and mothers and uncles and fathers and cousins who have died early, who have died from gun violence. I have one mom, her 14-year-old son was killed 2 years ago, and then her 22-year-old son just died last month. So there's a lot of hurt there. There's a lot of pain there. There are a lot of people who really need what Judaism offers. They need to feel the connection with their loved one who has gone on. They need to still feel like you can still pray for them. You can still lift them up. You can still elevate their spirit. You still are connected to them. You can speak about them. You can cry. You can laugh. You can do all of these things. So, and then the idea of, no matter what I do, how many people on this call have to actually make teshuvah and have to actually ask forgiveness every year at Yom Kippur for what they do every day to make a living? It's not a lot. Accountants don't go to temple on Yom Kippur and say, God, please forgive me for being an accountant. Please forgive me for being a hairdresser. Please forgive me. No. These people actually have to atone for the way that they survive. That's heavy. And just for someone to help them understand, oh my goodness, you can always make teshuvah. You can always return. You're not outside of God's understanding. God didn't forget that it made you. God didn't forget that you were created. You are still within God. God is still inside of you. You can still come back. Every year you can come back. You don't have to die for that to happen. You're judged every year. You don't have to wait. You don't have to live with all your rollover sin. You're judged every year. The book is open. And every year I get all of these people who are fasting and who are on a corner with me, and they're listening to a shofar, and they're doing Yizkor, and we're having these discussions, and they've actually come up with their own New Year's resolutions. This is what I'm going to do different this year, because they feel like they have hope. They have a clean slate. No matter what the state says, no matter what the city says, no matter what the neighbors say, no matter what people who think that they are beyond redemption say, they are not. They're not. It makes them better people. It gives them hope. And we as Jews have been coveting this in our synagogue forever. So when you take that out to places that need it, it is the healing balm that places like that need. So if you did a Yom Kippur service on a corner in Inglewood, California, you would probably have much of the same effect that I have. Because people need to talk. They need to unburden their souls. They need to reconnect with God. They need to reconnect with each other. They need to feel something for once. Because You have to deaden yourself. It's so much self-medication, it's so much drug use, it's so much alcohol abuse, it's so much. I mean, these kids don't even leave the house. It's almost like you need an anesthesia for life every day in neighborhoods like this. But what we offer an alternative to that. And we have that as Jews, but because of anti-Semitism, we don't take it. We're too afraid to take it anywhere. We can't take it anywhere because we're afraid of being attacked because we're Jews. But not on that corner. That doesn't happen there. That can't exist there. Because Judaism is the something that people there need. It's the something that they actually count on. On pretty much every Shabbat, we give away food. We do not just people pantries, we do pet pantries. We give away toiletries. We do all of these things almost every week. We do all of this giving because tzedakah is a main tenet of Judaism. This is what we are commanded to do these things. We're commanded to care. We're commanded to give. For other people, it's simply a suggestion. But for us, it's a commandment. It's a mitzvah. So it's kind of like, for me, I mean, I think what we need most, of course, we can always use donations because we're expanding. But honestly, I would love to see more of this in a place like Los Angeles, because Los Angeles needs it just as bad as Chicago does, just as bad as New York City does, just as bad as Atlanta does, just as bad as Houston or Dallas does, just as bad as any other major city in this country. My neighborhood isn't so much different from neighborhoods in your city. So the same bomb that I use on my corner in Chicago, you have it in you too. You have that exact same power. So I mean, like, I implore you to use that. Go out and use that. Do a Pesach on a street corner somewhere one day and see how many people will show up. Do something like that. Open yourself up. Let people see your Judaism. Don't be afraid to let people actually see who you are. See what you believe. See what your teachings command you to do. See what it is that your God has commanded you to do. And how it has commanded you to treat others. And how it's commanded you to behave in the world. Because it's different from the way other people are commanded. It's different from the way that other people are taught to behave or how to treat each other. It's different. It feels different. It's applied differently. So, I mean, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I understand I probably went a little bit off topic, but please understand it's almost 10 o'clock here in Chicago. So, yeah, I mean, I hope that answered your question.
No, that was perfect. I know, there are a lot of people who wanted to know about the, where you get the support for your organization and
it's
how
like
we can
high
support.
donation. It's like high donation. It's like they're like, multiples of like 18. Like, that's what it is. That's how that goes. And so the thing is, it's we don't get any sort of government funding, not local, state, or federal, nothing ever. And I think I kind of like it that way because I love our autonomy. The fact that we're able to do what we want to do, when we want to do it, where we want to do it. And I like to keep it that way. So most of our donations are just small donations. It's not really a lot of large foundations or anything like that. It's just people who believe in what we do.
Beautiful. Well, I know that, we have about 8 minutes left and you want to be mindful of your time because, as you said, where both of you are, different locations, it is still nevertheless late. So to begin to wrap up, I think one of the most poignant parts of this film and of the story that you're both sharing is that you have found a way to bring Judaism and Torah and mitzvot to life. You are exactly as you were just saying. It's this is not something that's in a book. This is something that you live with all of your being. It's not a job. It's a calling in everything that you do and breathe and live. And that's contagious and it's exciting and it's joyful. And there isn't sorrow, as you said, along the way, that stops it. There's the days where you say, I might want to give up, but it's not stopped because this is, as you said, God has called you to do this work. And several people have asked in the chat about, your sense of faith and relationship with God. If you could maybe share, a story or a reflection or where that came from for you, for both of you, and how that fits into your vision for what can be, because it seems like it's such a core part of what called both of you to create this film.
Brad, you want to talk about your faith in God first?
No, I want you to talk about your faith in God.
Okay. But I mean, honestly, I think just as a Black woman in this country, and I mean, coming from where I came from, I am very, genealogy is like my first love. So I know the stories. Like I went back. As you saw in the movie, I was in North Carolina. Um, I've been to Mississippi. I've been to Alabama. I've been to Georgia. I've been everywhere where my family was held. I've been there. So I know all of the stories and I know about the overcoming, but I also know about God bringing us through that. Because how else could we have gotten through that? How do people survive what Black people have been through in this country without God? Like, I don't understand. You don't stand a chance, not a chance, if God is not in the mix somewhere. There have been absolutely times in my life that I knew I did not do this. I didn't do this. I didn't know how to do this. I didn't have the wherewithal to do it. I didn't have the strength to do it, but God did it. And I've seen that's just the thing. It was in my mother's life. It was in my grandmother's life. This is something that has been passed down for generation to generation. Black people don't really have a lot of heirlooms. We don't have, you know, precious jewelry. We don't have necessarily have grandma's pendant or great grandma's wedding ring or anything like that to pass down. We don't necessarily have that. But we do have faith. We are given that. And it doesn't matter whether you're Christian or Jewish or Catholic or whatever, it doesn't matter. It is just a firm belief in God. It is a firm understanding that you survive by the grace of God, that you are only here because God has allowed you to be here. Because everything else in this world, everything else in this country has tried to destroy you. Everything. But somehow you're still here. So, like, every day, when my son comes home, when my daughter comes home, when I return home after a day on the block, unscathed, unmurdered, I mean, I am reminded that God has his hand on me. I'm reminded that this is what God wanted me to do, that God is going to watch out for me as long as I look out for the God's people. God is going to take care of me. That's how this goes. So I have a very strong relationship with God. Like, people just don't, it's hard for people to understand that sometimes. It is an absolute trust thing for me. You sit on a corner, and this is one of the most violent corners in the city of Chicago, and you take a nap. You know how many times I've actually fallen asleep in my lawn chair on a corner like that? More than I probably should, but sometimes it's really hot and I get tired. That's how it goes. But the thing about it is, I don't fear being out there because I know that I'm protected. I know that I'm doing the right thing. I know that I'm supposed to be there. So it's an absolute trust thing with God. If I do what I'm going to do, if I do what I'm supposed to do, God always takes care of me. So you can't do what I do and not have faith. You can't, because sometimes it makes absolutely no sense. The first day we went out there were people who had a pool going. Like, how long is it going to be before one of these mothers gets shot on that corner? Because it was like, this is the craziest thing in the world. Why would you do that? But it made every bit of sense to me because I was told to go there because I was placed there. So I have this sense of trust. And I mean, nothing can shake that. I've seen too many things in my life, just in the world around me, that reinforces it, that says you can trust this, you can trust this feeling, you can trust the spirit. So that's pretty much what I do. If I can't trust God, I can't leave my house, I can't survive. So it's like oxygen to me. Bradford?
My answer, I'm not as spiritual as Tamar. Not even close. But I am very connected to a sense of right and wrong. And I'm very connected to the Jewish people. And I'm drawn into stories about people who use their Judaism to help others in need. When I made African Exodus, which is a film about asylum seekers in Israel, there's a there's a figure in the film who he saw that there was an influx of asylum seekers into Tel Aviv. He's an artist. He is a secular Jew, but he is the grandson of Holocaust survivors. And he started a soup kitchen in Levinsky Park in South Tel Aviv to feed needy people every night. And I was drawn to him as a person and as a Jew because he was using the collective memory that Jews have to help others. And I see Tamar doing the same thing. And I showed Tamar that film, and she also, as soon as she saw this guy, she said, "That's me." And it is. He was the first Tamar for me. But really, that's the expression of Judaism that I most connect with. And if I can help tell those people's stories, then that makes me feel like a better Jew.
And then that was amazing. With that, we'll wrap up. I think that the message of kindness and Judaism is something that's living and breathing and very much so relevant, is something that each of you model for us and for our community. You're each a Kiddush Hashem. You're making our world better. Multiple people have said, we think that you guys inspired a lot of the stuff that happened this summer in terms of making the world better. Tikkun Olam, as you mentioned over and over again. And I join you, Tamar, that it's not about the title, it's about the work. And that is, we hope, as I know you said before that this officially started, we want you to come visit our community in the future, B'nai David. We'd love, Brad, for you to come too in the future if you're ever in LA. You guys are your models of what our community strives toward. And it's been a real bracha, a real blessing to spend this time with you. So thank you for letting us be a part of this journey. Thank you for letting us view the film. Thank you to Manasseh for making that possible. And truly, may we be able to create that kind of mishkan, that holy space for God to dwell in LA, in the world, carrying the torch of what you guys have lit. Thank you for lifting us all up. And I want to also just
inviting us. Thank you.
I want to just thank Dorit and Harry and Emily and Eitan, and also Matt and Jill, who sponsored having you guys come. So thank you for everything. And we hope this is the beginning of a relationship, building bridges.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a great night. Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.